I recognize the Honorable Parliamentary Secretary Buffonge.
Right, thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, those listening, comrades, colleagues, visiting guests. Good afternoon. Madam Speaker, I want to start by congratulating and thanking the Honourable Minister Osborne for continuing where I left off and for bringing his own initiatives to the ministry. Indeed, he's surrounded by some very fine people. Congratulations, sir. And also, Madam Speaker, I would like to actually commend Minister Buffonge, the real Buffonge, Minister Buffonge, for her dedication to her ministry and the work that she has been doing in that department, in that ministry for the last year and a half or so. I have had firsthand the last week in her absence acting on her behalf, and what I call baptism by fire, with the myriad of challenges she faces in running that ministry, especially in health, community services, and education. Madam Speaker, there are some realities about national budgets that do not change, particularly for small island states like ours that are dependent on granting aid. Madam Speaker, things like cost of living or reductions in cost of living, concessions, salary increases, capital developments, just to name a few. These realities shows up year after year, regardless of who sits on this side of the House. Madam Speaker, granting aid comes with conditions. Global issues will always cause ripple effects. And as a result, we must prioritize the way we go forward. The truth is, Madam Speaker, is that the gap between what we need as a people and what we are able to fund continues to expand. Every year, the demand increases on infrastructure and on access, on social services, on economic development, and every year, the resources required to make difficult and at times uncomfortable choices. We are forced to prioritize, to squeeze, and to sequence. And yes, at times, as they say, the proverbial rob Peter to pay Paul. Madam Speaker, this is not new. This is the structure within we operate as a government every year. But Madam Speaker, acknowledging that reality cannot become an excuse for limited ambition. It must instead sharpen our focus on the impact these decisions will have on our people. Madam Speaker, I remember a time at the Ministry of Agriculture where I wanted to do a particular program. And it was my PS, Miss Madam Beverly Mens, who said, Minister, will this bring the greatest impact to the people that you serve? Madam Speaker, when we examine the data presented in this very contribution, we see both progress and limitation existing at the same time. We see, for example, that in 2025, Montserrat recorded 14,544 visitors, generating approximately $26.1 million in expenditure, approaching our best pre-pandemic performance of $27 million, even with fewer arrivals. What that tells us, Madam Speaker, is that we are increasing in the value per visitor that we attract to Montserrat. We see a cruise sector that has rebounded with over 27 calls, and so far another 9 expected for the rest of this financial year. Not financial, for the rest of this year, sorry. We have seen new entrants into the market and renewed marine activity, including the return of the Caribbean Trophy Fun Regatta. We see from the BSM or Budget Support Mission last year, structured planning in access with a 3-strand strategy requiring over $12.8 million in year 1 alone, aimed at increasing seat capacity and driving our visitor expenditure to ISI 44 million annually. We see a tourism development program requesting 8.9 million over 3 years, with clear allocations to improve marketing, product development, training, standards, and still maintenance, all tied to measurable outcomes, including a projected 20% increase in arrivals, generating over 5 million in additional spend. So the data is there, the strategy is there, the intent is there. But Madam Speaker, sad to say, the challenge remains. Because alongside those gains, we still face high access costs that suppress demand. We still face infrastructure gaps that both residents and visitors experience. We still face inconsistencies in service, the absence of enforceable standards, and barriers in doing business that slows down investments. We still face a population constraint that limits our ability to execute at the pace required to keep up with today's demand. So the picture is not one of failure, but neither is it one of sufficiency. Madam Speaker, it is also important that we say that clearly, because if we are honest, and we are honest people in this House, if we are honest about the numbers, then we must also be more honest about what they imply. While this budget allows us to maintain what we already have with little room to grow, it does not match the full scale of what is required to unlock the level of growth that we are targeting. And so the responsibility on us becomes even greater. It means that every dollar allocated must work harder for us as a people. Investments in access must translate to increased arrivals and reduce barriers to our entry or to entry here. Investment in product must translate to higher visitor satisfaction and repeat visits across the sector. Investments in marketing must translate into measurable market penetration and conversion. Investments in culture must translate into economic activity, not just preservation. It also means that the government alone cannot carry this weight. It means that the private sector must be able to move faster. It means our diaspora must be engaged more deliberately as investors and partners. It means regional and international partnerships must be leveraged to extend our capacity. And critically, it means we must remove the inefficiencies within our own systems that dilute the impact of the resources or the limited resources that we already have. Madam Speaker, is a famous quote or saying, and my good brother Jenzil always reminds me, government is continuous. The progress we are seeing today is a result of sustained efforts over time. Needless to say that I disagree with my Premier when he says it's been 10 years of stagnation. Might have been 5, 2014 to 2019. but definitely not 2019 to 24 as we are seeing those rewards today. The proof is clear. We, and I say we have inherited solid projects that we are now seeing across the board right now. So we are not about starting from zero. We are building on what was. This budget contributes to that forward movement, but it does not and cannot fully close the gap between the need and the delivery. Colleagues, we have been here before. I have been involved. I have faced periods of extraordinary pressure. And on top of that pressure, Madam Speaker, uncertainty. First, the COVID-19 pandemic, and I know we want to forget that it happened. And then, of course, the fallout from the Ukraine war, or the Russia-Ukraine war. I remember, and we are a very jokey government. I think we appreciate a good joke every now and then. We love a laugh. Humorous, not jokey. Thank you, Madam Darcy. I remember gas stations striking for more money. I remember civil servants protesting for increase in pay. Madam Speaker, that's just 4.5 years ago. Those events place significant strain on our budget, on our economy, and our systems, and also our ability to deliver. The expectation to perform and to continue delivering never ceased. I mention that, Madam Speaker, simply to place this moment in context, because the nature of governance is that it's never done in an ideal condition. It is done under pressure, with limited resources and in circumstances that we do not control, but we must respond to. As a government, we have the responsibility to act within what is before us, Madam Speaker. I carry some of that responsibility. For the most, in my mind, apart from Dr. Ingrid, for the most demanding portfolios in this honorable House, tourism in particular remains our most scalable economic sector, and culture is the very product we offer to the world. And, I might get cussed for it later, navigating the vast array of diaspora concerns is of paramount to us all in this honorable House. But a product, no matter how strong, cannot sell itself if access is to be restricted. If that is the case, then we must If that is the case, then we must confront the single greatest barrier to the sector's growth: getting people here. The cost of travel to Montserrat is simply too high. It does not reflect the distance, it does not reflect normal market behavior, and in many cases, the final leg into Montserrat costs more than the journey across the Atlantic. This is not sustainable. It is a distortion that is holding back our visitor arrivals, weakening the connection with our diaspora, and ultimately costing this country much needed revenue. Access, Madam Speaker and colleagues, therefore is not a side issue. It is central to everything we are trying to achieve. That is why the completion of our port facility must remain a national priority. It is not just a project on paper. It is the gateway to expand our ferry services, supporting cruise activity, and improving cargo movement. Without it, growth will always be constrained. And while we work to bring people here, Madam Speaker, we must also be honest about what they encounter when they arrive here. The visitor experience at present is not as consistent as it needs to be. That is, of course, if we are being honest. Of course, we are monstrations. We have strong hospitality in many areas, and they must be commended for that service. But there are gaps that we can no longer ignore. Airfare, accommodation pricing, car rental rates are not always aligned with the quality of service that is being offered. That, Madam Speaker, affects our reputation. And I remember a good friend of mine, and I'm sure he don't mind me call his name, but I won't. He says, young man, your name and your reputation is the only thing you would have with you for the rest of your life. So we have to protect our reputation as a people by every possible means. It also discourages repeat visits. We need, therefore, a clear, enforceable tourism standard framework developed in partnership with our tourism authority and all our stakeholders to bring consistency, fairness, and confidence to our product. That conversation naturally brings me to infrastructure, because the experience does not begin at the hotel door or the guest houses or the friends and families that they stay with. It starts the moment that visitor gets through our ports and begin moving through our islands. Road conditions, the reliability of our electricity, and the state of all our key tourism sites all shape how Montserrat is experienced, both by visitors and our own people. Sometimes we talk as if it's just the people who come and experience our roads. We have to remember that our people continue to use these roads every day. Investment in these areas is not optional, and it is not separate from tourism. It is a fundamental to national development. And then we have a budget that must be spread or shared across all these ministries and departments. Madam Speaker, we are very excited for the possibilities of St. George's Hill and the new approach or the new vision it gives us. But we must also pay attention to our heritage. Plymouth in particular is one of the most powerful stories we have to tell. Yet, it continues to deteriorate under environmental pressure and underinvestment. This is not just a cultural loss. It is a missed economic opportunity. We should be thinking urgently and boldly about how we preserve and present that space, using and utilizing modern tools such as the digital interpretation, QR codes, augmented reality, to create that experience that is globally compelling and uniquely ours. You know, every election cycle, all of us put up huge billboards across the country. Nice pictures, well-dressed people on these billboards. And what we're saying at the authority is that something as simple as a billboard that's displayed so that we can show persons exactly what Plymouth was will be an asset. Madam Speaker, beyond preservation, growth will require deliberate diversification. There is real opportunity in the blue economy space, in marine tourism, like diving and yachting, etc., and equally in the green economy through hiking, ecotourism, agricultural or agri-tourism, even zip lines. But unlocking these opportunities depend on the environment we create for the investment. Our private sector must be able to move with clarity and confidence. That means simpler processes, faster approvals, and regulatory systems that enable development rather than delaying it. And if possible, given our context, we want it all in the same place. because the reality is doing business in Montserrat remains too complicated. A centralized business registry and more streamlined processes are long overdue. At the same time, we must address the ongoing challenges with correspondent banking through stronger regional and international engagement, while also expanding digital payment options locally to modernize how transactions are conducted. And alongside all of this, we must fix a basic but critical gap: the absence of fully enforced standards in food and accommodation. It continues to undermine our competitiveness and weaken our visitor confidence. This, Madam Speaker, is not an abstract issue. It is how we are judged as a destination. Over this financial year, or as soon as possible, this legislation must be finalized. I'm looking in that direction, but I'm not pointing. It must be finalized. Sorry. And also enforced. This is the aim of our Montserrat Tourism Authority. Madam Speaker, all of these issues point us back to a single unifying priority: access. Our Access Montserrat framework is built on 3 pillars. First, the strengthening of St. Martin Air Gateway to improve both regional and international connectivity through more integrated and visible routes. And we have to commend the Access Department and the Premier's Office for the work that has been carried out in establishing and getting this gateway back up and running. Second, we have to continue to reinforce the Antigua Air Corridor to ensure consistency through stronger performance-based arrangements and more resilient fleet operations. And third, establishing a year-round ferry, a bridge that can move passengers, cargo, and support major events, especially in St. Patrick's and Christmas, with consistency and capacity. These, my good people, are not abstract ambitions. They are targeted, practical interventions designed to increase access, and not just access to the country, but the capacity by at least 35%, and to drive meaningful growth in visitor expenditure by 2029. Madam Speaker, we cannot access or address access without addressing the barriers that are once again placing real pressure on our already fragile air access with regulations. And note, I said we. This is not unfamiliar territory. We have been here before also. In 2016, when the regulations reduced our runway and disrupted ultimately the suspension of Winair and its services, and we are seeing, sad to say, similar strain emerging again in 2026 under the weight of new regulatory demands. Madam Speaker, my background is aviation. Fortunately or unfortunately, I have the knowledge of knowing load sheets, trim sheets, and what it takes for these planes to take off from here. And sad to say also, what I'm hearing does not equate to what I know, the capacity of what these planes are. Comrades, residents, at this critical phase in our development, Montserrat cannot afford to repeat our history, where seemingly well-intentioned regulations without sufficient context for small island realities end up restricting rather than enabling our connectivity. We have to push for a full review of these regulations. We must ensure that safety and compliance do not come at the cost of our survival, our mobility, and our economic resilience. Our air access is too critical to be continually constrained in ways that do not reflect our size, our vulnerability, and our dependence on reliable connectivity, and quite frankly, do not reflect the capabilities of the Twin Otter. And again, I am speaking as a man who was qualified. I'm sorry? Not sure what you want me to repeat. But I said our air access is too critical to be continually constrained in ways that do not reflect our size, our vulnerability, and our dependence on reliable connectivity. And quite frankly, again, as I said, as a man who have worked in that industry and prepared load sheets for these very same planes, do not reflect the capabilities of the Twin Otter, tourism, development, and culture. Madam Speaker, our Tourism Authority continues to deliver strong results even under serious constraints, including training, product development, and market expansion. And sometimes we are tempted to confuse normal day-to-day operations with industry and growth and development. There are some things we do just because that's what we have to do. At the Budget Support Mission, we proposed issue 8.9 million in the Tourism Development Program. This would have generated returns exceeding this investment through increased visitor spend in the very first year. Montserrat's cultural heritage is a unique global asset. It combines geological, African, Irish, volcanic, musical, and also creative legacies. Cultural industries are not supplementary. They are central to competitiveness, identity, and economic growth. The Montserrat Arts Council has delivered key programs in music, festivals, training, cultural preservation, despite limited resources. Our future priorities include an international music festival, a national steel band orchestra, expanded regional participation, and a cultural policy. Festivals such as St. Patrick's, Christmas, and Calabash, including our Literary Fest, Culture Head Day, St. John's Day, require a structured development strategy focused on youth development, marketing, production quality, infrastructure, and international reach if Montserrat is to remain competitive across all the other islands competing in that space. So I said this plainly. I support this budget because it advances the work. I support this budget because it provides the resources to continue building on the strategies already in motion. And I support it with a clear expectation that gaps, or the gaps we have identified through data, through observation, and through our lived experience, will be addressed with urgency, deliberate action, and again, I'm looking this way but pointing that way, with any fiscal space that may becomes available throughout the financial year. Madam Speaker, I want to place on record my appreciation to the Montserrat Tourism Authority, its board, and the full team, to the Office of the Premier, to the Montserrat Arts Council, its leadership, its staff, and every cultural practitioner who builds our heritage under very difficult conditions, to every sponsor for their cultural sponsorships, to every private sector promoter. I really don't know how we would do these festivals without these people, and I really wish we would recognize them and say thank you for their service. To every operator, every vendor and guide who invests daily in the visitor experience, and to every Montserratian at home and in the diaspora, who holds this island in their heart. Madam Speaker, I commend this budget to this honorable House, and I rest and concede the floor. Thank you very much.